Hi, this is Leticia Contreras. I am Group 3, Causes and Pathophysiology of COVID-19. What causes COVID-19? Well, in 2019, a coronavirus was identified as the cause of the disease outbreak that originated in China. So the virus is now known as the Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2, or now as we know it, SARS-CoV-2. The disease it causes is called coronavirus disease 2019 because of the year it broke out. So what causes COVID-19? So COVID-19 is a disease caused by SARS-CoV-2, which I mentioned earlier, that can trigger what doctors call a respiratory tract infection. It can affect your upper respiratory tract, such as your nose and throat, your sinuses, and it could also affect your lower respiratory tract, which is your lungs and your windpipe. COVID-19 spreads the same way other coronaviruses do, mainly through person-to-person contact. Infections can range from mild to deadly, and even it's one of 7 types of coronaviruses, including the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which is MERS, and the one that I just mentioned, the Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, SARS. So now I'm going to go into pathophysiology of COVID-19. Now that was a big word for me. I had to look it up because I almost didn't know how to pronounce it, but I believe it's pathophysiology. So the definition is the study of how the disease affects the system of the body, causing functional changes that can lead to health consequences. Pathophysiology combines pathology, the study of the causes and the effects of the disease, and physiology is the study of the system of the body functions physically. So now that we know what this means, I'm going to go into the pathophysiology of COVID-19. So there's a lot of pathogenic mechanisms that you would have to understand to study this disease. Of course, it is still being studied this year because of the outbreak that happened, and they're still doing research on it and how to understand this one. The thing that I found out that makes it unique is that there's in the virus, the way it goes into the body, that it attaches itself to the cells and everything and works its way in there. There's also an insertion that they find very unique. So this virus can be very deadly. That's why it goes into your respiratory system. It starts to attack your lungs, and when your lungs fail, you need oxygen. It starts attacking other organs, and it replicates really fast, and therefore that's why they say the elderly are more prone to this, because of their underlying issues they already have, and the body has to work harder to fight this off. And on slide 10, I have an illustration of how the respiratory droplets containing COVID-2 goes into the body. If you want to look over it, it has where the fluid accumulation, difficulty in breathing, and then how the cells go into the other cells, and it starts replicating itself, and it is released, and it has the illustration there on slide 10.
My name is Pamela Rodriguez, and I am doing the second part of this presentation, which is the next 5 slides. Okay, for the first slide, it's talking about the attachment to host cells. Well, the virus protein spikes attach to a protein on the surface of cells, called ACE2. When the coronavirus binds to it, it sets off chemical changes that effectively fuse the membranes around the cell and the virus together, that allowing the virus RNA to enter the cell. The virus then hijacks the host cell's protein-making machinery to translate its RNA into new copies of the virus. In just hours, a single cell can be forced to produce tens of thousands of new virions, which then infect other healthy cells. And as you can tell by the image, this is basically it. Right here it tells you the steps. Okay, for the second slide. Types of host cells. So, in COVID 19, ACE2 is found especially on cells that line the upper respiratory tract, called goblet cells and ciliated cells. These cells are the frontline defenders. So, goblet cells are cells that produce mucus which traps bacteria and pathogens. Ciliated are cells that sweep the debris and mucus out, clearing away the unwanted particles. The result in the virus attacking these host cells are symptoms such as difficulty breathing due to inflammation in the respiratory tract. Okay, the method of entry into host cells. Cells of many organs contain ACE2 receptors on their surfaces that are used by COVID-19 to enter the cells. The virus uses its spike proteins to latch onto the receptors. It enters the cell through a process called endocytosis, in which the cell surface surrounds the virus and ushers it inside. Once there, the virus uses cell's protein-making machinery to make hundreds of copies of itself. This overwhelms the infected cell and eventually causes its death. Okay. Replication and assembly processes of new vision. So when the virus is inside the type 2 alveolar cell, it needs to replicate and assemble. In a cuveola type 2 cell, the virus fuses with the membrane of the cell and releases a single-stranded RNA and its components. This 5' and 3' hijacks our transcriptional machinery where ribosomes will read. In addition to that, it will spit out 2 polypeptide proteins and read that single-stranded RNA and produce a bunch of assembly proteins. It will then reassemble and spit out of the cell, making thousands of viral particles. Aggression from host cells. Many viruses use a similar logic. They have a receptor domain and a binding domain, but use different enzymes of the host. To some extent, this also affects the way the virus functions in the body. Different enzymes are expressed in different tissues. Furin is expressed throughout the human body, so the range of cells the virus can enter is enormous. We can suppose that this is why the virus is particularly aggressive. Okay, and then I added my citations, and that is it.
I was assigned the host immune system responses of COVID-19. So on the left side, I have 4 bullet points that basically just describe this slide, and they go into detail about the slide and they answer the question. So for the first bullet point, says in the immune system, when a person is positive for COVID, their S protein is present on the surface of COVID-19, and this is then pinched inside the host cell, binding to the ACE2 receptor. After the host has been binded with the ACE2 receptor, the enzyme furin is present and plays a vital role for the virus to enter. Most of the time, people who develop COVID-19, the symptoms they will experience range from mild to moderate disease. For some people, it may be different. Every person who has been affected by COVID-19 has had their own complications of symptoms or has shown no symptom, which is referred to as asymptomatic. And also, when I researched this slide, I found out that it's not really easy to give a answer to what the host reacts, how the host reacts, because everybody, their immune system reacts different to the disease and to the virus. So this slide was very hard to research, but I got some of the main points out there. And on the right side, I just added a picture of the early stage signs and the severe stage signs that affect the immune system. And this is my second slide. The second slide was modes for spread of COVID-19. I have also 4 bullet points on this slide. The modes for the spread of COVID-19 are respiratory droplets, transmission of SARS, short range of inhalation. The droplets that cause spread range in size. Basically, what I read about that was when somebody sneezes, a woman could sneeze softer than a man, so the air droplets would be obviously different sizes depending on the sneeze, or cough, or laugh, or anything that requires air droplets. So that's where I got the second bullet point from. The third one, most of the time, people are sneezing, talking, laughing, coughing, and the respiratory droplets are within the distance of whomever is near you. And in the picture, it shows like how people are near each other and how the airborne droplets are spreading from person to person. Airborne transmission is also a mode of spread. It is different from droplet transmission. It refers to the presence of microbes within droplet nuclei, which are generally considered to be particles which can remain in the air for long periods of time and be transmitted to others over distance greater than 1 meter. So it can spread a very far distance is what the last bullet is mainly saying. And on the left side, I just provided a picture that is showing tips on how to stop the spread of COVID-19 and germs. Thank you.